Michelle Beckett joins me, first of all, founder of the ADHD Collective, who was herself diagnosed as an adult with ADHD back in 2017. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining me today.
Hello, Sheila. Thank you for having me.
Were you surprised to learn about that backlog or not? I'm guessing not.
Absolutely not. And actually, 8 years is not the worst I've heard. I've heard of 10 years, I've heard of 15 years. And that's if you're lucky enough to actually get on a waiting list, because there's many parts of the UK where you actively have to be in suicidal crisis or about to have your children taken away from you in order to even get on the waiting list, to be assessed, and then wait years and years. And this is life-changing, life-devastating. And in my case, if I had have had to wait, I had to pay privately because I wasn't going to get my diagnosis on the NHS, I would not be here. And I know that. If I hadn't have got diagnosed 7 years ago, I am absolutely sure I would no longer be here.
Well, let's go back 7 years, shall we, and before that as well, and just to give people a sense. I mean, it will be different with individuals, but there are a lot of commonalities as well. What was going on that led to you getting that diagnosis in the end?
Well, acutely, it was a suicidal crisis, which made me think that now is the time to do something. But I was in my early 40s, twice divorced, single parent of 3 daughters. And I just felt like a massive failure. I'd always been really clever at school and done really well academically, but just hadn't quite got my life together. There'd always been a feeling that I was different from the age of about 7, that I blurted out things impulsively, that some things that other people looked like they found easy were really, really difficult. And yet I could do some things that other people found difficult really easily. And I just thought, this isn't right. My life just doesn't seem to work like other people's. And the overwhelm and the feeling that I had 10,000 tabs open in my head and that they would switch without my knowledge or permission. It was just a feeling of, please, brain, I want you to do this today. We really need to get this done, or we really need to emotionally regulate, and it won't do what you want it to do. And I just felt like a massive failure. So there was a series of failings, failed relationships, failed businesses, often from choosing the wrong partners in both, quite frankly, from low self-esteem, from many decades of having undiagnosed ADHD, a feeling of, I've not lived up to my potential, I'm a massive failure, I can't make this work. The shame and the overwhelm was just so painful, essentially.
And obviously, at a certain point, you talked there about suicide, or suicidal ideation at least. That's obviously a point where you're thinking, what's been going on cannot continue, and obviously and you were right about that, and yet you chose the wrong method of fixing it but which you thankfully are still here to tell the tale about. But you reached that point, did you, where it's just like, my life as it is cannot continue as it is.
Continue. It's a failure. It is failing. I know there's something wrong. Can't quite put my finger on it. It was years of trying this supplement, going to the doctors, trying this, thinking it was my diet, thinking it was exercise, buying meditation machines, thinking there's something different about my brain and I don't know what it is. And maybe it's a character flaw, maybe it's a failing in me, and other people just push through this, but I couldn't. And the shame of that.
How much of the shame was self-generated, and how, well, obviously you're not going to be able to give a figure on this, but how much of it was self-generated, but how much of it was about people going, what do you mean you can't do your banking? Or what do you mean you can't keep your head straight about this? Just do it. Adults do it. You be a grown-up. Behave like a grown-up.
And it's a chicken and an egg situation, because actually we now know that children with ADHD have received 20,000 more negative messages by the age of 12 than a neurotypical child. And why can't you do this? Why have you forgotten this? Why is your room messy? Why have you left that? Why haven't you got your shoes on? Why? Why have you forgotten this? And the shame of, oh yes, I was supposed to be doing this.
It's a whole, it's like a massive keep up with everybody else or else kind of message.
Yeah. And then you self-flagellate because you say to yourself, I should be able to do this. I know I'm capable. And the worst thing is, on some days you are incredibly capable, and some days your ADHD is not a problem. And then you keep trying to get back to those days when some days I do feel like my IQ is 200. It's a bit like Limitless. even non-medicated. And then other days I feel like it's 50 and my brain's full of cotton wool or mashed potato. And you think, I need to get back to those days when it's functioning. Why isn't it functioning consistently?
And I think...
And it's trying to get back to that.
Because for those people who might still think, oh, it's just being a bit distracted or not being able to concentrate that well, clearly your description is way beyond anything of that ilk. And I think the description you use about tabs open on a computer screen is a really good one, because most of us are familiar with that, when you've been working all day or whatever you've been doing online, and, you just think, oh, look at that, I really need to do, I still need that open. Have I dealt with that? Have I done this? Have I done that? Have I done this? And it can feel, with or without ADHD, it can feel like an overwhelm, can't it? You did get help eventually. You'd said there you had to pay for that help. How quickly did you benefit from that help?
Almost instantly. So before I even took the medication, there was an instant feeling of relief and forgiveness. Although that journey did take a few years, and there was a grieving process and a learning about my brain and why I do the things I do. But there was an instant explanation. It's not me. I'm not flawed. It's not my fault. It's not because I failed to push through. It's because my brain works differently. And this is why I do some things well. And this is why I really struggle with other things. So the relief was instantaneous. I'm forgiving my past self. And that took, a period of years, but it was a massive relief instantly. And then the medication itself was life-changing. I mean, there's this rhetoric that it turns kids into zombies, or it's not necessary. It doesn't turn anybody into zombies. It just makes me feel like me on a good day. And it's really, really subtle. And I'm a bit more emotionally regulated, and you find that the day's gone easier, and you think, oh yeah, I wanted to get this done and I did it.
And when tell me a bit about that emotional dysregulation, because I suppose we've focused on the practical abilities of life, the day-to-day of life in most of our conversation. But when you talked about 2 failed marriages and difficult relationships at work or in business, what was the dysregulation? How did that manifest itself?
Well, sometimes it can come out as anger, but with me, it was almost as if I just felt so flawed, or I would turn it inward. A lot of women turn that emotional dysregulation inward. That's why I think boys and men often get more diagnosed out, because sometimes their emotions are displayed more outwardly with ADHD. But it was a case of, I'm turning it inward, and I'm making myself feel so flawed, and I'm beating myself up. So the abuse went inward. And then that would make me, lower my self-esteem. And then in terms of relationship choices, that would have a huge impact on the type of partner that I would choose. Because I'd say, I'm flawed, therefore I'm in the bargain bucket. So who else is going to put up with me? I'll just put up with this because I know I'm flawed.
The narrative in your own head that was playing at the time.
And I could go from, being perfectly fine, and then a rejection. So we're very sensitive to rejection, people with ADHD. Somebody would say something, I might take it the wrong way. And then I would spiral into like a deep, almost instant depression with the emotional dysregulation of feeling like, well, you are flawed, you are this, you are useless, you are all the things that you've been told you are.
And the raising of children must be hard if you're in that. I mean, it's hard full stop, but if you can't really predict how you're going to be from day to day or week to week, you've really got a lot of people relying on you there, haven't you, your children?
Yes. And the demands of a parent, particularly women who do a lot of the kind of donkey work of remembering if it's school fancy dress day, or have you replied to this letter? And the expectation that that's what a mum does, and does it seamlessly. Otherwise, you're not a very good mum. And forgetting things like that. Mum, have you topped up you've forgotten to pay my dinner money account. You've done this. Oh, my goodness me. And the guilt and the shame of this, of just remembering all these balls in the air, these plates spinning, is huge. And actually, sometimes not being present with your kids because you're worried about something and your mind's been taken elsewhere. And I do feel shame for that, but there's an explanation now.
And have you explained it to them? Have you explained?
Yes,
yeah. They
do understand. And, we've got a lot of neurodiverse people in the family. We now know. I was the first to get diagnosed. And particularly with my mum sadly died when she was in her early 50s. But knowing now, looking back, she was ADHD.
I think that's an almost universal experience once a diagnosis has happened that someone else in the family, the penny drops for them as well. I'm going to leave it there, Michelle. Not least your line is wavering a little, but thank you so much. I think you've given a really good explanation there. I know it was your own experience, but I think it's mirrored in a lot of other people's experiences as well. Thank you, Michelle Beckett, founder of the ADHD Collective, diagnosed in adulthood back in 2017. Loads of calls coming in. We'll get to them in just a second. It's 2:15.